and welcome to the only table where the screams are the appetizers, and the fear is the main course. Pull up a chair, if you dare. Tonight, the shadows are stretching long, the floorboards are creaking with unseen footsteps, and the air is thick with a whisper you can't quite place. You're listening to the Scare Table, where we serve up the deepest, darkest, and most delightful chills the world has to offer. We have set a place just for you. Get ready to feast on true tales of terror, unsettling legends, and the bizarre happenings that defy explanation. Turn down the lights, lock the doors, and maybe check what's standing behind you. It's time to gather round the Scare Table. Let the haunting begin.
All right, settle in, check your audio levels, and welcome back to the Scare Table, the official Forensic Blueprint podcast brought to you by GhostfaceHorror.com, your ultimate digital media brand for deep dive horror analysis, franchise breakdowns, and structural breakdowns of the genre. If you haven't already, make sure you head over to the site to check out our full text ledger archives, streaming radio station, and complete horror audit sheets. Tonight, we are discussing 2026 Faces of Death Reimagining. Directed by Daniel Goldhaber and written by Issa Mazet, the incredible creative team behind Cam and How to Blow Up a Pipeline, this project handles a monumental piece of horror history. I'm your host, Chloe, and these are my co-hosts, Marcus and Shane. Take it away, Shane.
Thanks, Chloe. Welcome all to the Scare Table. My job here is to audit the structural side of these films. So, let's begin. Architecturally, this is a massive found footage retrofitting project. The team took a notorious 1978 mockumentary shock asset, something originally built on cheap, grainy 16mm celluloid and designed for under-the-counter video store infamy, and completely rebuilt it for the modern digital landscape. They turned it from a loose anthology of fake autopsies into a high-concept contemporary thriller starring Barbie Ferreira as a website content moderator who stumbles into an underground web matrix of hyper-real videos recreating the original film's death scenes.
I'm Marcus, and I discuss the blood, gore, and realism of the films. Viscerally, the ledger for this 2026 build is an absolute mindbender. Goldhaber and Mazet are playing a brutal game of gore metaphysics. Over at GhostfaceHorror.com, we audit the mechanics of practical effects every single day, and this thing is a masterclass in how to change the standard. They aren't just trying to outsplatter the original's execution videos, they are actively auditing how we consume violence today. The effects work shifts seamlessly between pristine, high-definition digital crispness and the grainy, compressed, pixelated artifacts of leaked cell phone footage, dash cams, and body-worn sensors. It trades the theatrical, operatic violence of a standard horror movie for a cold, clinical, hyper-realistic aesthetic that makes your stomach drop because it feels like something that actually spilled out of a dark corner of the internet.
And again, I'm Chloe. My job is to get deep into the minds of the killers and the victims. And psychologically, this is a deeply distressing diagnostic of the modern digital mind. It moves the franchise away from the original's cheesy Dr. Francis B. Gross faux philosophical narration and plunges us straight into algorithmic paranoia and compulsive voyeurism. Co-starring Dacre Montgomery and pop icon Charlie XCX, the film focuses on the psychological deterioration of workers whose actual job is to sit in a dark room and filter the worst depravities of humanity. It explores the toxic, addictive nature of internet urban legends, the blurring lines between deepfakes and authentic human trauma, and the terrifying realization that in 2026, the monster isn't a guy in a mask. It's the collective, unblinking eye of the online audience demanding more blood for the feed.
From a spatial engineering standpoint, Goldhaber completely redefines the boundaries of the found footage layout. The film splits its geography between the sterile, claustrophobic cubicles of a tech firm content moderation office and the isolated, screen-lit apartments of the protagonists. The architecture tells you everything you need to know. It's built like a corporate panopticon where human misery is processed like data on an assembly line. A massive portion of the film's spatial tension takes place inside the UI layout of a computer monitor. The screens are packed with nesting windows, chat logs, media players, and streaming analytics. It turns the digital interface into a multi-layered labyrinth. The geometric boundaries aren't walls and doors. They are browser tabs and encrypted folders. Goldhaber uses the screen-in-screen layout to build a relentless sense of claustrophobia, trapping the audience inside the same digital cage as the protagonist.
The practical and digital effects synergy in this movie is built on a terrifying standard of realism: the artifacting illusion. The film intentionally warps its best practical effects pieces by viewing them through the simulated lens of low-bandwidth internet video. You'll see a sequence, like a sudden industrial accident or a backyard stunt gone horribly wrong, captured on a shaky vertical phone camera. The frame dropping, the digital compression, and the pixelated motion blur make the bone snaps and arterial sprays look stomach-churningly authentic. The uncanny valley. Because the plot flirts heavily with deepfakes and digital manipulation, the violence has a unique, sickening layer of technical uncertainty. The makeup effects are designed to look slightly off through the digital filters, mimicking the disturbing quality of real-world shock sites. It's a cold, non-stylized ledger of trauma that completely avoids the fun, theatrical coolness of 80s splatter.
This is a massive clinical diagnostic on the desensitization of our culture. The psychological core of the movie is the systematic demolition of the protagonist's emotional shielding. Content moderators suffer from severe, real-world secondary trauma, and the film weaponizes that reality. We watch the main character develop severe hypervigilance, insomnia, and sensory dissociation as the line between the horrific videos on her screen and her physical reality completely dissolves. The film holds a mirror up to the dark psychology of the audience. The real horror isn't just the content of the videos, it's the insatiable internet culture that hunts for them, shares them, and analyzes them in Reddit threads and Discord servers. It frames Faces of Death not as a static piece of media, but as a living, breathing psychological virus that feeds on our collective compulsion to look at the forbidden.
It is a wildly smart, technically precise update that proves Goldhaber and Motzi understand modern digital anxiety better than almost anyone else working in horror right now.
Yeah, it completely washed the bad taste of decades of cheap, direct-to-video knockoffs right out of my mouth. This thing is mean, clinical, and heavy.
And psychologically, it left me wanting to throw my phone directly into a lake and delete all my accounts. It's an incredibly effective, deeply uncomfortable piece of modern architecture.
The new file is officially logged, the stream is buffered, and the 2026 Faces of Death anomaly is on the slab. Chloe, hit us with the opening table prompt for this modern shock revival.
All right, boys, let's set the standard line for this digital audit. Given how much the internet landscape has mutated since the 1978 original, what is the one modern technological element this 2026 remake absolutely nailed? And what is the one thematic legacy element from the old VHS days you think got lost in the digital upgrade? Shane, map it out for us.
All right, let's pull up the drafting stools and look at this digital build. From a structural engineering standpoint, this movie is a completely different kind of renovation. Goldhaber and Motzi didn't just build a standard horror layout, they constructed a modern surveillance grid. They took a property that was originally framed as a theatrical documentary and rebuilt it as a localized, high-tech corporate thriller. Let's break down the blueprint of this 2026 reconstruction to see exactly how the spatial design functions. In 1978, the original Faces of Death was engineered by John Allen Schwartz as a loose, chaotic, globe-trotting anthology of fake autopsies, animal slaughters, and staged executions. It was built on cheap, grainy 16mm celluloid and designed to look like a raw, unedited clinical archive. For the 2026 build, the production grid moved to a highly controlled, high-contrast digital environment. Goldhaber and Motzi set up their infrastructure inside the sterile, fluorescent-lit backrooms of a tech firm content moderation office and the claustrophobic, screen-lit apartments of the internet age. The result is an environment that feels remarkably cold, hyper-connected, and clinical, a stark contrast to the gritty, analog wilderness of the VHS era. The spatial layout of the 2026 Faces of Death relies entirely on the architecture of the digital panopticon. A massive portion of the film's spatial tension takes place inside the UI layout of a computer monitor. The screens are packed with nesting windows, live chat logs, processing queues, and streaming analytics, all competing for real estate. Goldhaber uses the monitor's layout the exact same way classic filmmakers used physical architecture. He populates the negative space of the screen with potential threats. You are forced to look at a data spreadsheet in the foreground, while an execution video is buffering in a tiny window in the bottom corner of your eye. The film turns the desktop interface into a multi-layered labyrinth. The geometric boundaries aren't walls and doors. They are browser tabs, encrypted folders, and firewall perimeters. It's a brilliant piece of spatial configuration that completely traps the characters and the audience. Now that the digital blueprint is on the board, let's deliver the final audit on this modern shock revival. The one structural choice I absolutely loved. The one thing Goldhaber and Mazzei absolutely nailed is the structural claustrophobia of the desktop interface layout. They didn't just make a movie about the internet. They built an accurate spatial grid of what it actually feels like to monitor it. The way the film handles the visual overload, forcing the viewer to process a cascade of content flags, chat rooms, and video streams simultaneously, is pure cinematic architecture gold. It perfectly captures the fragmented, hyper-vigilant psychological map of a modern content moderator. The screen becomes a hostile environment where a single click can breach your entire psychological perimeter. The one logic leak or production flaw I would fix. I would completely redesign the film's third act logic, where the viral videos leak into public multiplexes. In the final stretch of the movie, the narrative structure tries to scale up the threat by having these underground, hyper-real execution videos suddenly hijack public advertising screens and movie theaters. This choice completely breaks the intimate, localized logic of the digital cage they spent 80 minutes building. The terror of modern shock media isn't that it's broadcast on a massive public billboard, it's that it isolates you, forcing you to look at it alone on a tiny personal screen in a dark room. If I were the project manager, I would have kept the climax entirely contained within the personal network infrastructure. Let the threat stay hidden in the dark corners of the web, slowly closing the digital walls around Barbie Ferreira's character, rather than turning a brilliant cyber thriller into a loud, conventional Hollywood public panic.
Man, you hit the nail right on the head, Shane. The second the movie tried to turn those internet videos into a big public theatrical spectacle, it totally lost that greasy, isolating feel of real online horror.
It shifted the psychology from an intimate, addictive internet urban legend into a generic national security threat. But visually, your breakdown of the desktop panopticon really shows how they turned a web browser into a genuine house of horrors.
It's an incredible layout when they keep it personal. But alright, Marcus, the drafting board is warm and the feed is buffering. Step up to the morgue table and run the visceral audit on the kills of this algorithmic slaughterhouse.
Oh, you know I've been waiting to get my hands dirty with this one. Let's scrape back the digital layer and get down to the actual meat and bone of this project. From a practical layout perspective, a title like Faces of Death carries a massive debt to the gorehounds, and the FX team on this 2026 build definitely brought the heavy machinery. Let's crack open the operational diagnostic on how these kills were engineered. When John Allen Schwartz rigged up the 1978 original, he was working with basic B-movie practicals, a lot of theater makeup, fake molds, and highly restrictive camera angles to hide the seams of the gags. It was all about tricking a naive audience into thinking they were watching real, clinical disasters or back-alley rituals. For the 2026 reconstruction, cinematography icon Isaac Bauman uses a hyper-saturated, confrontational palette that feels like a classic giallo, but shot through a clean, modern digital lens. The visual architecture moves away from the muddy, covered-up practicals of the 80s and exposes everything to harsh, high-contrast light. The special effects team heavily favored intensive, wet practical rigs over digital polish, making the blood look incredibly bold, thick, and brutally immediate. The entire structural blueprint of the violence relies on Dacre Montgomery's character, Arthur, methodically staging live, real-world executions that mirror the greatest hits of the 1978 mockumentary. Because the footage is shot to look like it's being uploaded directly to a streaming platform, the camera rigging has to mimic the casual framing of a webcam or a mobile phone, while the underlying practical effects have to look flawlessly seamless. The mechanical tension comes from watching a kill happen in a single, unedited take, forcing the FX rigs to work perfectly on cue without the safety net of a cutaway. It's a high-wire act of mechanical gore engineering that trades the grainy mystery of the past for an upfront, inescapable clarity. Now that we've mapped out the workshop mechanics, let's run the final field test on how these kills actually hit. The one sequence that absolutely slapped. The absolute masterpiece of this build is the modernized electric chair execution scene. The FX team completely outdid themselves here. They took one of the most infamous, debated sequences from the original 1978 film and rebuilt it with terrifying precision. The physical mechanics of the sequence, the dense, heavy smoke pouring out from beneath the headpiece, the violent, rhythmic body spasms, and the horrific blistering of the skin are handled with an uncompromising level of detail. By avoiding clean digital cuts and letting the camera linger on the wet, melting practical prosthetic work, it manages to feel deeply mean-spirited and raw. It completely captures that old-school, stomach-churning intensity while utilizing the crisp visual clarity of 2026 technology. The one gag that completely bottomed out. The sequence that totally stalled out for me was the recreation of the infamous monkey brain segment. In the original film, the hidden camera restaurant scene where patrons strike a monkey and eat its brains was the ultimate forbidden fruit rumor, even though it was completely staged with a theater prop and theatrical stage blood. In the 2026 remake, they try to give this setup a modern twist, but the physical execution looks completely low-budget and synthetic compared to the rest of the film's heavy practical rigs. The textures look noticeably plastic, the framing feels clumsy, and the sequence loses all of its visceral impact. Instead of evoking the dark, taboo energy of an underground urban legend, it ends up looking like a cheesy, uninspired haunted house prop that totally pulls you out of the experience.
I completely agree on the electric chair sequence, Marcus. The skin blistering was almost impossible to look at, which means the practical team did an incredible job. But you're right, the monkey brains callback felt completely hollow, like they just checked it off a nostalgic list without engineering a real scare around it.
That's the risk when you're renovating classic blueprints. If you don't upgrade the mechanics of the iconic scenes properly, the whole framework collapses under its own legacy. But man, when those practical rigs hit, they hit like a sledgehammer.
All right, let's shift the camera angle and talk about the actual human element holding this whole digital framework together. From a thematic and character study standpoint, Goldhaber and Mazzei are attempting a really difficult balancing act. They aren't just trying to make a scary slasher, they are attempting to map out the psychology of the exploitation era. Let's look at the emotional blueprints of how these characters are wired. In a standard modern slasher, the final girl is usually running from a physical trauma tied to a specific location or a familial curse. But for the 2026 build, Margot's trauma is completely decentralized. It's hosted on the cloud. By giving Barbie Ferreira's character a backstory where she is publicly notorious as the train video girl, the witness to a viral, real-world tragedy involving her sister, the writers create a fascinating psychological paradox. Margot isolates herself in the physical world, using an analog flip phone and keeping her personal life completely unplugged. Yet she spends her professional hours staring directly into the digital sun as a content moderator. She is trapped in a loop of digital self-flagellation, trying to clean up the internet to atone for a video she couldn't stop from spreading. It's a deeply compelling, tragic foundation for a modern horror protagonist. Then you look at the architecture of Dacre Montgomery's Arthur, and the film takes a hard turn into a hyper-modern update of the Scream thesis. Arthur isn't wearing a mask to hide his identity. He's staging these hyper-realistic, practical executions specifically to reveal himself to the algorithm. His entire motive is built on the commodification of taboo. He understands that in a media landscape completely desensitized by a non-stop barrage of real-world horror, the only way to truly shock an audience is to recreate old, legendary cinematic fakes as absolute, undeniable reality. He is the ultimate product of the attention economy, a killer who doesn't want to hide in the shadows, but wants to scale his engagement metrics. With the psychological grid laid out, let's deliver the final thematic audit on how this character dynamic holds up under load. The one psychological choice I absolutely loved. The element that absolutely elevated the film for me is how it highlights the institutional hypocrisy of the media landscape. There is a brilliant, dead-eyed cynicism to the way Margot's corporate environment is constructed. The film does a phenomenal job showing the bizarre, contradictory boundaries of modern censorship, where an educational video on life-saving Narcan doses or proper sexual health gets immediately yanked by the system for policy violations, while a video of extreme, horrific violence gets a pass because the engagement metrics are through the roof and the algorithm loves it. That specific critique of how corporate tech platforms actively profit off the morbid curiosity of the public while sanitizing harmless human behavior is the sharpest, most accurate thematic writing in the entire script. The one character deficit that weakened the build. The major structural failure in the narrative design is the complete lack of depth given to the supporting ensemble. While Barbie Ferreira puts everything she has into selling Margot's isolation and brash naivete, the script completely strands her co-stars in underwritten, perfunctory spaces. Talents like Charlie XCX and Josie Tota are brought into the layout as co-workers and influencers, but they are treated purely as structural scaffolding, mechanisms to either get hunted down or to provide brief exposition before the camera switches back to a desktop monitor. Because the supporting deck is so thin, the middle section of the film starts to feel less like a living, breathing narrative and more like an analytical data entry task where Margot is simply clicking through folders. If you want the audience to feel the tragic weight of an online atrocity exhibition, you have to make us care about the people being converted into digital commodities.
Spot on, Chloe. When a movie spends that much time staring at a screen, if the human connections on the other side of the glass feel hollow, the whole emotional perimeter drops.
Yeah, it turns a living, breathing slasher into a tech support simulation. But man, when Barbie and Dacre are finally sharing the same physical room in that final act, the psychological friction is lethal.
All right, the blueprints are rolled up, the data is logged, and the 2026 Faces of Death anomaly is officially stamped into the ghostfacehorror.com archives. I gotta say, for a movie that spent 2 years sitting on a shelf wrapped in studio red tape, Goldhaber and Midze actually delivered a structurally sound, modern nightmare.
Yeah, it definitely had the horsepower where it counted. I'm just glad it wasn't a total digital wash. My only real complaint is that I had to watch a movie about the internet instead of watching Michael Myers crush skulls with his bare hands.
Oh, please, Marcus. You've been complaining about a lack of heavy machinery for the last 2 hours. Go buy a blender if you miss the industrial crunch that much.
Hey, a blender doesn't have the same satisfaction as a 12-gauge shotgun barrel driven completely through a drywall partition, Chloe. It's about craftsmanship.
And on that incredibly disturbing note, it is time to pack up the gear, turn off the fluorescent lights, and clear out of the studio for the night. But before we shut down the main power grid, we're handing the keys over to our automated broadcast deck.
That's right. If you're listening to our live audio stream over at ghostfacehorror.com, don't touch that dial. We are kicking off the late night block with something heavy, deep, and perfect for a midnight drive down a dark Georgia highway.
drop was worth the fall. The drop was worth the streaks. The streaks were worth the salt. The salt was worth the miles. The miles were worth the fault. The fault was worth the scars. The scars were worth the end. The end is worth the dark. The dark is why I've come. The ride is worth the fall. I've had some near misses with the holy light, and some long cold dances with the things in the night. Left some houses haunted and some blood on the floor, and I do it all again just to see them once more. Cause what I should have been is a man long dead, but I keep on walking with this price on my head. I dig my way back in. The drop was worth the streets. The streets were worth the salt. The salt was worth the miles. The miles were worth the fault. The fault was worth the scars. The scars were worth the end. The end is worth the dark. The dark is why I've come. The ride is worth the fall. The drop was worth the streaks. The streaks were worth the salt. The salt was worth the miles. The miles were worth the fault. The fault was worth the scars. The scars were worth the end. The end is worth the dark. The dark is why I've come. The ride is worth the fall.
Well, the files are closed, the slab is cold, and the table is clear. For Marcus and Chloe, I'm Shane. This is the Scare Table, signing off. Cue the music, drop the lights, and we'll see you next time.
The Scare Table.